De klas die Joel in Holland, Den Haag gaf op 11 augustus 1958.
And she learned and practiced and proved that a mind imbued with truth could destroy sin, disease, and death. There was nothing of a spiritual nature. Here was a human body filled with sin, disease, or death, and a mind, her mind, or yours or mine, imbued with truth, could remove that. And on that basis she healed and did beautifully. But then one day she woke up to a very sad fact. Some of her students had discovered that the same mind, turning the truth upside down, could do evil with it. And they were. And so she wrote a chapter called Demonology for her early book, in which she told the story of some of her students who were using the power of mind destructively. They were using it not only to make people sick so that they would come and get more treatments, they were using it to make them bring more money to them too, and for other purposes. And so she wrote a chapter warning about it. And for that reason, even to this day, in the latest edition of Miscellaneous Writings, you will find a sentence that says, the same mind that can do good can do evil. You wouldn't believe that, would you? That the same mind that can do good can do evil. It depends on how you use it. Yeah? Now, if you are in the physical realm, you can take any piece of matter or any piece of material thing or any material law, and you can use it for good and you can use it for evil. They're even pumping the germs of diseases into us to cure them, to cure the diseases. They are now using the germs of cancer to cure polio. Do you understand what I mean? That you can use matter for good or for evil, so you can mind. You can use your mind to bless, as these two girls that I spoke about. Or you can use the mind as we are using it here, to give out truth and receive truth. Because don't doubt for a minute, this truth, although it's spiritual, is coming through my mind. And you are receiving it in your mind. Later, when it goes down to the level of your soul, it will jump up with healings. While it stays in the level of your mind, it will not produce very much in the way of healing. It's when it becomes conviction. Now then, when we receive then an inspiration, as far as God is concerned, it's pure and good and holy. And it has for its being the harmony of the entire spiritual kingdom. But when it is filtered down into the mind of a person who knows good and evil, then it says, choose ye this day whom you will serve, good or evil. And you'll find out that the very powers that you can use for evil, you can use for good, and the powers you can use for good, you can use for evil. Now that exists only until you come to the place that I'm telling you about in the infinite way, where you consciously give up the powers of good and evil, where you agree there are no powers except God. Then you don't use truth. Because if you did, you could use it to suit your sense of good and evil. And sometimes you'd use it for what you think is good and it would turn out evil. Oh yes, there have been lots of parents that have ruined their children's lives, by being too good to them. Or what they thought was good. There again, their concept of good. Now, when you come to where we are in the infinite way, you no longer have a choice. because you are not using any powers, either for good or for evil. You have given up the use of powers, and you have settled yourself back into the realization God alone is power. I can't use God. I can let that power use me. Then it can't be used two ways. See the difference? God can't use power two ways. Therefore, if we stop using power and let the power of God flow through us, there can be no evil. That's why a person, if they really catch the message of the infinite way, there cannot be sin, there cannot be disease, there cannot be selfishness, there cannot be hate, envy, jealousy, malice. Those things cannot exist in them because they've given up that self. And they're letting the God self express itself. It isn't as if they were expressing God. Oh no. Then again you'd have your choice. Shall I express God or shall I express devil? No. You are not expressing God. You are letting God express itself in you and through you and as you. You see that? That's where we are. When we sit down to give a treatment, we don't give you a treatment. We don't even ask the name of the patient. We don't even ask the disease that the patient thinks he's got. We aren't interested in symptoms or diagnosis. We aren't even interested in whether it's a man or a woman or a child or a person 9 years of age or 99. That doesn't enter into our work at all. Our work, when you ask for help, is to sit down and be still and let the Spirit of God flow. That's all. That's all. Let it flow. Because it is the all-knowing mind that knows where and how to flow and what to do. Because it is divine love, it does reach those who have reached out for it. You might wonder, how is it then that it reaches you? It reaches you because you made the contact. If you wrote to me, or if you spoke to me, or telegraphed, or cabled, or telephoned, or even if you sat in your room and just said, well, Joel, here I am, you have made contact. Because it isn't this body that helps you, and it isn't this brain. It is that part of me which is omnipresent. It's the soul of me. And so it is with you. I don't have to know anything about you humanly, because all through my writings you will read that I don't know how to heal. And don't think that that's false modesty, because it isn't. I don't know how to heal. I know nothing about healing. I do know this, that all that appears in this world as human good or evil is illusion. It isn't illusion out there, it's illusion in the mind of the person who's beholding it. Out there is the temple of the living God. Out there, I would have to say with Peter, ye are the Christ, the Son of the living God. I know you. And your body is the temple of the living God, because I'm seeing out through my soul faculties. I'm not looking out through my human eyesight and judging by appearances. Do you see that? Now, you will find, as you continue in the study of Infinite Way writings, you will find a little exercise that all of our students go through. Look down at your feet and ask yourself the question, are you down there in your feet? And see what kind of an answer you get for yourself. And then go on up to your knees and ask yourself again, am I down there? And go up to your waist, and go up to your chest, and go up to your head, and go all the way up to the top of you, and ask yourself, am I there? And you'll come up with a realization before you're through that there isn't any place from your toenails to the topmost part of your hair where you are. No surgeon could find you there because you aren't there. And the minute you realize that, you begin to see the secret of your true identity. Because you have thought when you looked in the mirror that you were seeing you. And now you'll know that you never have seen you in a mirror because you aren't there. You've seen your body. But that's different than you. See that? That's different than you. And as you travel up and down your body several times, you really finally come to the awareness, I'm really not here. I'm really not here. There's no such thing as a me inside this frame. And then you'll know why it is that absent treatment is successful. Because there is no absent treatment. Wherever you are, I am. And wherever I am, you are. Because none of us is confined in a body. None of us is confined in a country called Holland or the United States. No. None of us is confined in the earth or in the air. I fill all space, and so do you. There's only one eye. There are not 50 eyes in this room. There's only one eye, and I am that one. When you reach out for help, I am that one. When I respond, I am that one. For that one isn't a man named Joel, that one is God. God is your true identity, and God is my true identity. And when you reach out to me, you reach out to God. But who do you think it is reaching out? God. That's oneness. One God. Thou shalt have only one God. And that one closer to you than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. So when you reach out to a practitioner for help, are you reaching out further than your own heart or breathing? No. No, not that you're inside here. That's only the idea of closeness, oneness. Closer to you than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, am I. So when you reach out, you're reaching out to the infinity of your own being, appearing as Joel today, but somebody else will be reaching out to you tomorrow. When you have recognized your true identity, when you have stopped believing that you inhabit a carcass, a body. Do you see that? And when you realize that you are nowhere between the toenail and the topmost hair of the head, then you'll say, where am I? And then you'll say, I? Oh, I. What did Moses find? I am that I am. I am. And from a shepherd boy, he becomes a leader. Jesus found the same thing, and from a carpenter, he became a savior. What was the difference between Jesus and all the other Hebrews at the temple in Jerusalem? He's the only one who discovered who I am. And that's why he could say to his disciples, whom do ye say that I am? And it took a Peter to finally realize, oh, have we been so long with you and have not realized? Thou art the Christ. Sure, and he was trying to make them awaken to see who they were. They didn't quite make the grade. So you see that God is in his heaven, and all is well with this world. But if you and I are not partaking of that wellness, then the secret is, ye must know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And the very first truth you have to know is there are not two powers. That's the whole world belief. Two powers. But the spiritual truth is, what did hinder you? Pick up your bed and walk. What power is the holding you down there? None. So come on, get up. But that man was suffering from a belief that disease is power. And so his belief kept him there, not the disease. And it wasn't his belief, it's a universal. And so with us. It is never your, don't ever malpractice anybody by saying that you are evil, or you are holding wrong thoughts, or you aren't loving enough, or you aren't just. Don't ever do that. You will make your patient twice as sick as they were before. Release everybody from condemnation and say there is no sin in you at all. I do not hold you in bondage, and I do not judge you or condemn you. I find no fault in you. You are perfect. Then what are we dealing with? A universal belief which you're accepting. Now give it up. Do you see that? His belief kept him there, not the disease. And it wasn't his belief, it's a universal. And so with us. It is never your, don't ever malpractice anybody by saying that you are evil, or you are holding wrong thoughts, or you aren't loving enough, or you aren't just. Don't ever do that. You will make your patient twice as sick as they were before. Release everybody from condemnation and say there is no sin in you at all. I do not hold you in bondage, and I do not judge you or condemn you. I find no fault in you. You are perfect. Then what are we dealing with? A universal belief which you're accepting. Now give it up. Do you see that? Don't make the metaphysical mistake of saying you should be more loving, you should be more grateful, you ought to attend church, you ought to read so many pages of my books. Don't ever do that, because you're putting the burden of guilt on innocent people. Every one of us is a victim of the universal belief in good and evil. And therefore, it isn't our wrong thinking. The man who steals, don't condemn him for being a thief. He isn't. There's a universal belief in lack, and at that moment he's a victim of it. You can help to free him by not calling him a thief, but by realizing you're not suffering from being a thief, you're suffering from these universal beliefs in two powers. You're suffering from the belief that you're a mortal who has to earn his living by the sweat of his brow. But I'll correct that for you and know for you that you are heir of God, joint heir with Christ, to all the heavenly riches. You do not have to labor for your bread or steal it. And so it is. The minute that you begin to release people from their own sins or mistaken impressions, false teachings, by never condemning them, never judging, never. When you ask for help, even though something within you will tell you what the particular error is, don't pin it onto them. Don't do that. Realize it's a universal belief, not theirs. And you will be forgiving them. And you'll be releasing them from their sins. I learned a lot of this by being a Christian Science reader in prisons. And I learned that there is no such thing in prisons as bad men. Every single man in there is suffering from the belief that he's bad. And the judge that sentenced them believed it too. They weren't bad. Some of them were stupid. Some of them were ignorant of spiritual law. Some of them were even ignorant of how to earn a living. But they weren't bad. There wasn't one that I ever met that wanted to be a thief, if he was sane. Not one. They were driven by some circumstance of the moment that threw them into that life. When we came along then and said, we're not here to reform you, we're here to reveal to you your true identity. You ought to see the difference in those men and know how quickly many of them went free. Just because condemnation was lifted from them. And they began to have respect for themselves and to believe that there was hope in the world. And I found in my healing practice that as long as I never held a person in condemnation to their sins or to their ignorance of truth, but always set them free in the realization, I know thee who thou art, not the Christ, the Son of the living God, and even your body is the temple of the living God, and then realize whatever it is that's holding you in bondage isn't you, it's a belief that we have pinned on you, the world has pinned on you. That began to break it right there and then. Yes, the principles of the infinite way are not difficult. They are revolutionary, but they're not difficult. But they are difficult to put into practice because they contradict what we have heretofore known. Heretofore we've dealt with two powers, and now we've got to be able to learn to laugh at all negative powers and say, you fooled me enough generations. I really believed there were powers of lack or limitation. There were powers of sin or powers of disease. And now I know that there can't be a God and some other kind of a power. And as you do, you find yourself released from believing in two powers. And when you no longer believe in them, it's like no longer believing in ghosts. You don't see any anymore. As long as you believe in ghosts, there'll always be one turning up wherever you are. But the minute you see that there can't be ghosts, ghosts seem to leave your ken. So it is with this. In proportion as we can bring ourselves alive in the realization of God. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy soul, with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy being. How can you do all that and fear something else? That's not loving God. That's not even believing in a God of one power. Take these principles. You'll find many of them in the writings of the Infinite Way. They're always referred to as the correct letter of truth. Work with that correct letter of truth until it becomes a spirit of truth in you, the consciousness of truth, like this very one of I. Don't hesitate day after day to sit down for a few minutes and just examine your body and see if you really can find yourself inside of it. And one of these days it'll dawn on you, of course I'm not in there. Of course I'm not in there. Where could I be? And then you'll begin to realize you are as omnipresent as God is. And then you'll know why the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Because God is there. And it's the same way if your thought rests in Australia, that's where God is. Because you aren't outside of God. Well, you will have a good bit of reading to do in my writings to get acquainted with all of these principles. And as I've said, there are now many, many, many of my class tapes here in The Hague. And those of you who really want it can avail yourself of them and hear them. And whatever help any of us can be in this work, we're glad to do it. As you all know by now, Mrs. Van Aikman Bassett here is sort of a guiding light around this place, and was the one through whom I first came to Holland in this work. And all the work that I've given has been under her leadership, if you want to call it that, or direction, and always here in her home or a couple of times in a public hall. But with what we witness here this time, I do not hesitate in saying that by the next time I come, there'll have to be a larger place. And let us understand this before I leave you. I've said it before, I'm just repeating it. There is no infinite way organization. This work is carried on in the strangest way imaginable. I doubt that many of you could understand it or believe it. But nowhere in the world do we have an organization that I just travel around with the organization under my hat. And I carry this word forward. Now, we have books that are published in the United States, some in California and some in New York, different publishers. And we have books that are published in London, some by George Allen Unwin and some by Ellen Fowler and Company, two publishers there. And then we have this Servier here in The Hague, who publishes The Infinite Way in Dutch. And he has another manuscript that he has not yet published. And in Switzerland, there's still another publisher who publishes The Infinite Way in German. I travel the entire United States and Canada, England, Scotland, Holland, Germany, Switzerland, and Sweden. North and South Africa, India, Australia, and New Zealand. I'm a one-man circus. And I carry this message to groups like this. Groups that were never advertised for, that came together as this group comes together, without advertising, without being sent for, just because in one way or another, and sometimes in miraculous ways, they hear of it, receive some benefit, and then come. For many, many years, I also carried all of the healing work and did the practitioner work all around the globe. Fortunately, today we have some practitioners in the States and Canada and England here, and I'm being given a great deal of help in that direction, but there's still too much of that for me, and we need lots more practitioners. And again, they are not authorized practitioners in the sense that they carry a license or a designation or a title. The only way they attain it is the same way that I attained my place around the world, by consciousness. The very moment you have the consciousness that heals, you are a healer. The minute you have a consciousness that heals, people will discover it. And they find you. They find you even if you're hiding away in Hawaii. They find you and send for you or write for you, because it's all a matter of consciousness. Nobody can make you a practitioner or a teacher. Only you can do that yourself. If I could ordain practitioners or license them, there would be no certainty that they'd ever heal anybody, because I have no power to make them healers. And authorizing them certainly doesn't make them healers. What makes them healers is their attaining the consciousness of one power, this consciousness of divine grace. When they have that, they're healers. And the world knows it and finds them. So it is. Our work is conducted in groups like this. Now, there are no limits to how many groups there can be in a city. There can be 100, 1,000. If there are that many people with a consciousness of wanting a group and of being able to maintain one. It's their consciousness that does it. It's not authorization. It's not permission. It's consciousness. We have in London, just pages and pages of places where there are tape recording groups, and all out from England, and all over the United States, Africa, and all over. And it's all accomplished that way. As soon as an individual realizes, this is my life, this is my work, first thing you know, they have a few people around them, and then they are a group. See that? And probably a group grows to be 20 or 30 or 40, and then somebody out in another neighborhood says, well, why should we come all the way in here? We'll get a tape recorder out here, and then a group forms out there. And that's how our works carry on. Totally unorganized. No memberships. Everyone free to expand in accordance with their own God-given desires. Well, of course, Mrs. Van Egmond here knows that this is always a joy to me to come and talk to our students And you who are new to our work, I'm sure that it won't be long before you know what a great joy it is for me to share this and leave this with you, and then to pray every single day of the week that God open your consciousness to the truth of your own identity and of the only power there is, and that this power is closer to you than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Blessings and thank you until we come again. God discloses itself to us. We attain the light, but in one way or another it comes. And when it comes, the chaff is wiped out. There are no more impure thoughts. There are no more selfish motives. There is no more self-seeking. It can't exist where the Spirit of God is. And that's why there is a passage in Scripture, very illuminating. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Now, if you want it, that's really a formula of life. There is no liberty where the Spirit of the Lord isn't. And the Spirit of the Lord cannot be where there is envy, jealousy, hate, malice, resentment, bias, bigotry, lack of justice, lack of equity. Can't be. God can't blossom there. The Spirit can't bear fruit there. But when we come to Jesus Christ, and He tells us that if you abide in this Word, and let this Word abide in you, you will bear fruitage, rich fruitage, spiritual fruitage. But what word is He talking about? Well, do you think there's any word more important than the Sermon on the Mount? There just isn't. If we need any word that's written in a book, that one will do for a while, the Sermon on the Mount. Read it and see how far from it we are living. And then watch how difficult it is to begin to live that life. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't practical, because I've witnessed the practicality of it for 28 years. It's the most practical way of life there is. It's the only way in which I have found that these evils do not come nigh your dwelling place. This is the only way I have found to keep hundreds of people, thousands of people free of sin and sinful desires, free of disease, free of poverty, free of danger even in war times. Just the practice of these principles has done all that. Not by praying that they be safe while the enemy is a victim of all our guns, but praying also that the grace of God illumine them and touch them and free them from whatever errors or sins may be a part of their consciousness. Now, with all of this, you begin to catch a glimpse of what God is. And then, when you do, you will learn the most startling fact that has ever been revealed on earth. You will learn that man is not responsible for his sins, his diseases, his death, or his poverty. You will then begin to perceive that your wrong thinking had nothing to do with your disease or your poverty. And you'll find out then that there is a way to keep you from all of these dangers and diseases and deaths of the world. Not that you may demonstrate it in one generation and 100%, but you'll be awfully happy demonstrating it in 80 or 90%. You will learn that the only reason we suffer is that we have accepted a belief in good and evil. Before we accepted that, we were in the Garden of Eden. And we were children of God, and we were God-made, God-ordained, God-governed, God-maintained, God-sustained. And there wasn't a fly in our ointment. There wasn't a sin in our horizon, or a disease, or a lack. We were perfect beings, and perhaps you think that it's not possible to live that way on earth, but stop thinking it. It is possible to live that way right here on earth. Right now, too. And to help others attain it. Into the mind of man, and the experience is described as eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Into the mind of man came this sense of separation, which made some things good and some bad, some conditions good and some bad. And man began a dual life, lived outside the realm of God. For in the realm of God, I can assure you, there is no evil. None of any nature. That's why it said that in his presence there is fullness of joy, because there isn't a trace. When you're in the presence of God, there isn't a trace of a sin, a disease, a false appetite, a lack, or limitation. There isn't a thing but complete and perfect harmony when you are in his presence. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. There isn't a trace of bondage to sense, sin, disease, death, or anything else. But we cannot enter the presence of God while we have the powers of good and evil in our mind. Now, how do you learn this? I'm not talking now, I know that I'm not talking to strangers to the metaphysical world. I know that probably every one of you here has a background of either Christian Science or Unity or New Thought, one of the teachings. And so you'll understand when I say to you that your first experiment can begin with spiritual healing. And we will assume now that you want to be responsible for the healing of someone in your family, friends, yourself. Begin tonight when you go home. Sit down quietly and ask yourself questions like this and see what answers you get. Is God infinite? Could there be a God that wasn't infinite? No, if God were less than infinity, it wouldn't be God. Then if God is infinity, does God give life and kill? Oh, wait a minute now. He can't have two infinite qualities. He can't have the infinite quality of life and the infinite quality of death. Which is it? Which is it? Is God life? Is God immortal life? Is God omnipotent? Then life must be omnipotent. Life must be omnipresent. Life must be eternal. Now, what power, if God created man in his own image and likeness, perfect, what power would bring about imperfection? Well, there isn't any power because you said that God was infinite. Now think of that. Do you mean it? Because on that point hinges the beginning of your healing ministry. Do you actually believe that God is infinite? Of course you don't. But the question is that if you meditate and ponder the idea a few minutes today, tomorrow, and the day after, you will ultimately come to the realization, of course, God is either infinite or there is no God. You can't have a divided God. Neither can you have a God of good and a God of evil. Then that's been my mistake. I've had two powers. I've had a power that could cause disease, or a power that could perpetuate disease, a power that could kill from disease. Well, when I look at it in that light, of course, it's an impossibility to believe that there are two powers. You can't have an infinite God and another power, or else you've wiped out your infinite God. But how does that shape up with what we see on earth? Well, who do we accept as the greatest teacher, exemplar, way shower of the nature of God on earth? Jesus Christ? Of course. Who else? When he was called upon to heal, did he ever once answer, I haven't enough power to heal you? Or the power of the devil's too strong? Or this disease is too advanced? Did he ever once say or indicate that disease was natural, normal, or right? To a crippled man, he said, what did hinder you? He knew what hindered him. The man was crippled. But did he acknowledge it as a power? Heavens, no. He said, here, pick up your bed and walk. There's no power to hold you there. Because I'm telling you, God is the only power there is. To the blind man, do you know how he healed the blind man? By putting spittle on his eye. Do you know what spittle is to a Hebrew? A sign of contempt. When a Hebrew spits, that means he's contemptuous of you. That's his sign of contempt, to spit. And Jesus, knowing this, picked up this contemptuous spittle, this nothingness, and healed a man with it. Did he prove that spittle was power, or did he prove that blindness wasn't power? And that's your answer. He didn't prove that spittle had healing power. He proved that blindness didn't have the power to blind. And the man opened his eyes. Pilate, I can crucify you or set you free. Thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from God. If I didn't submit myself to this, you couldn't do a thing. Because I've disappeared through crowds many a time when I wanted to. I've raised the dead, I've healed the sick, I've fed the hungry. You haven't any power. Only God has power. Unless I can be made to accept some other power. And so the whole healing ministry of Jesus Christ proves that he never once acknowledged that there is a power in disease or death or lack. Never once. Now you and I have inherited this human heritage of the belief of two powers, and in some measure every single one of us in this room is under that universal belief. It isn't your belief or mine. It was here before we were born. It'll be here after we've gone away from here. It is a universal belief that we pick up the very moment we're conceived and born. And from then on we suffer from it. All our lives we're suffering from the belief of good and evil until at some point in your spiritual ongoing you become acquainted with the teaching of Jesus Christ, and you realize that he lived only for one purpose, and that was to prove there is no power on earth but God, and that power is good. And to know that is to lift you up out of sin, disease, or death. Now remember, when John was a little bit dubious as to whether he had made a mistake about this master, and sent and asked, art thou he that should come? His answer wasn't yes or no. His answer was, Go, show John what things ye have seen. The sick are healed. The dead are raised. The blind have their eyes opened. The deaf have their ears opened. By what power? By not acknowledging that there is any power but one. One power, and that power is God. Now, when you sit down to heal and you pray God to remove your diseases or your sins, you might as well save your breath. Because if you don't, you'll be as ludicrous as these people who write about Lourdes. 100,000 people make a trek to Lourdes, all praying to God and all praying through the same church and all praying through the same priests. And out of 100,000, 15 get healed and they give God the glory. They don't say a word about what God did to 99,985. He just ignored their prayers as if they weren't on earth. Do you believe God healed that 15?